Imagine a cohesive, all-encompassing solution, a panacea for all your gaming ills. It's the G in RPG system. Hello, I'm Colin Green and you are listening to Spike Pit. The more games I play, the more I feel that systems could really be approached in a modular way. We talk about it often, borrowing from one design, adding it to another, and the concept of a Frankenstein type of game is fairly widespread, especially in maybe the DIY community, the old school community. I imagine most communities where you've got enthusiasts gathering together, ideas, cross-pollinate, and you end up with a whole big jumble. You're always going to get your purists that either want to do things rules as written, as Gygax intended, dialing back the clock. But even those folks must have their moments of weakness and think about changing things up, mixing in ideas from somewhere else. So it seems to me unavoidable. And I think it's interesting. I don't know how many times this kind of discussion has featured on my podcast. It's that tinkering thing. I don't know what it is, but I find it pretty fascinating. What is it we're looking for? What are we trying to achieve? Who's it all for? Is it for ourselves? Is it for our players? Is it for a mix of both? Who knows? I haven't got the answers, but that doesn't stop me from asking lots of questions. Got a couple of calls for you today, and I think I will perhaps talk about something I said that I would come back to. It's day 29 of RPG a Day month, and I never really did talk about this hit dice idea that I had. So let's get to the call-ins, and then I'll jump back in with some of my thoughts.
Hey Colin, great point in your fraction episode. We don't need that pesky D20, just percentile dice all around. All the best games are percentile based, right? We have Top Secret. We have Boot Hill, Gangbusters, Star Frontiers, and of course, the best fantasy game of them all, Rollmaster. Talk to you later. Oh, and I guess if you like the horror thing, you have Call of Cthulhu, although I prefer Unknown Army 2nd Edition, which is also percentile based. So either way you win. Take care, my friend.
Hey Colin, it's BJ. I just finished the Fracture episode, and one thing that made me think of when you mentioned the dice, you get into original D&D, BX, even in 1st and 2nd edition AD&D, depending on what you're doing, those things where you roll a 6-sided die, you're really using a fraction there. Now that I think about it, it's a 1 in 6 chance, a 2 in 6 chance, 3, 4, 5, whatever it may be. In that case, you kind of are using a fraction represented by chances in 6. Anyway, just thought on the dice. Also, taking things back to Traveller, you mentioned using ability scores, maybe lowering ability scores as a way of, representing stress, damage, the effects of whatever's happening to the character. That's actually how Traveller handles physical damage. You have strength, dexterity, and endurance. And every time you take damage, you lose a point of endurance. And then once you're out of endurance, you begin taking points off your strength and dexterity. And once you've lost all those things, you're down. And then it requires, the more serious damage, the more intense the type of medical care you've got to get to recover from those things. But yeah, they do directly attack your physical stats when you take damage, as opposed to having a hit point pool. So yeah, it's just a different approach to how things work.
We heard then from Jason of Nerds RPG Variety Cast and BJ, the Arcane Alienist. The dice thing is just a pondering that I had, this idea that you could totally play 5th edition with your D100. It might be more intuitive. Maybe that's something I'll throw into the Spike hack. I've stripped back 5e to virtually its fundamental basics. You could perhaps sum it up as chapter 7 of the player's handbook, and not much more than that. Take all your numbers, times them by 5, and you've pretty much got a D100 game there. I can't really see a problem with that. As for the other games Jason reeled off, I'm thinking I don't know that I've played that many of them. Call of Cthulhu, yeah. Star Frontiers, yep. And I revisited it recently, and I don't know how well it's held up. I've got a lot of nostalgia for it, but I don't think I'd actually play it now, which is a shame. I've still got my old set. Unknown Armies, that's a funny one. I've never played that. And the other one that Jason waxes lyrical about, obviously, clearly, with it being the best game and all, is Rolemaster. My understanding is it came out as a supplement to D&D. But I could easily be wrong on that one. BJ, talking about Traveller. Recently I said that never captured my imagination, but the more I hear about it, I've got to say that it does sound quite curious. Carl, the gemologist, was talking about how he would run it as not space trucking, and that is a common criticism, and I've no reason to doubt Carl and his GMing ability. I'm sure I'd find it enjoyable, but what I like the sound of is this idea that your stats matter. So you've got these abilities derived from a combination of other abilities, and they erode. Before I go down this road, I fully understand that you can mess about with something like D&D so much that what you end up with is so different to the original, it begs the question, well, why would you bother? And to that I'd say, well, why wouldn't you? It's probably more of a thought experiment, and that is this idea that you could mess about with D&D stats more. You could damage people's stats, wear their stats down. You could have more ways to regain eroded stats. And what about Constitution? In the game at present, it doesn't really do a lot. So in 5th edition, it's got no associated skills. It could help you out with your saves, because you could have proficiency in Constitution saves. You could have bonuses that would help in Constitution saves. But beyond that, not very exciting. What if you did away with hit points, and hit points was tied really to your Constitution score? People might give it a little bit more attention. You wouldn't have these big buckets of hit points. Maybe you would get through combats a lot quicker. The whole thing could be a lot more deadly. It would be a big shift, but I think you could do it, and I'm wondering if I might try it. I did think about formulas to arrive a normal hit point solution, so hit points remaining as they are currently in the game, but instead of having hit dice, somehow you just tie your amount of hit points to some sort of equation that uses your constitution, or your constitution bonus, or your level times your constitution bonus, something like that. But then I thought you could just make it your constitution, and you don't constantly increase it all the time. I mean, that idea, there's nothing to say that you've got to up your hit points every level. You could just do away with that. Food for thought. Let me know what you think. And that, as they say, is a wrap. Big thanks goes out to you, the listener, for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to old Spike Pit. Take care, and I'll catch you later.